difficulties about the people from India here in Canada. But they probably have the same feelings about us. And yet for trade, it can bring better feelings between countries when they trade with each other.
Lee, thank you for the call from Lillooet. Ernesto is next now in Vancouver. Your thoughts on this trade mission to India, Ernesto?
Good afternoon. So my question is, what is the business plan that the NDP provide prior of the premier going to India? And when you do a research, you find out that India gets most of their wood from Russia, a cheaper price than Outlander, right? So what I'm trying to say, it seems to me that the NDP, they just go with the flow, don't have a business plan or anything. They haven't come up with how it's going to be with Donald Trump, with tariffs and anything. And the Americans to see us like a dummies. We cannot balance our own budget. So how can he deal with Trump? I mean, that's the reality that we are living under this NDP government. There is no way to operate. And look at our deficit now. And when he took over, it was we were rich. Now we're poor. That's what I'm saying. And thank you for your time and got a good show. Thank you so much.
Ernesto, thank you for the call as well. Our numbers again, 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. Ravi Kahlon, the Minister for Jobs and Economic Growth, was also asked about those extortion concerns in BC and whether they would raise that in any of their meetings during this trade mission this week. Here's what he had to say.
Those concerns, of course, are always there, and we do rely on the federal government to be able to have those kind of nation-to-nation conversations. The Indian central government and our national government, those are the places for that. Our focus on the trip is really with different states. We're not really engaging with the central government here.
That's Jobs and Economic Growth Minister Ravi Kahlon speaking yesterday to CBC's Rosemary Barton. Let's go to another call now as we ask you, should BC be embarking on a trade mission to India this week? The Premier is there, as well as Minister Kahlon, trying to shore up more markets for BC products, including BC lumber. And this is, of course, in light of the economic uncertainty put forth by the tariffs from the United States. But backlash to that trip coming from the members of the South Asian community this week. 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. We have Paul on the line in Sechelt. Hi there, Paul. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, thanks for taking the call. Yes, Canada must go to India. It always has gone to India. I worked in about 47 countries, starting in the mid-1960s. If you start to trade with only countries that have no moral or human rights issues, you finish up trading with very few countries. India is a complex market. Canada has to diversify. Throughout my 50 years in exporting, Canada's always relied upon the U.S., and Trump has illustrated that can't do that anymore. So yes, trade missions, trade shows. I've been on Canadian trade shows and missions to India. It has to be done politically and diplomatically, but it's for Canadian industries themselves to get out there, knock on doors, create their own markets and relationships. But yeah, India has a few problems, but most of the countries I've worked in, and that's including the whole of the Middle East, including Iran, the whole of the Indian subcontinent, and I'm afraid you can't often discriminate in terms of palatable markets, those that observe human rights and do not. And so yes, I support any initiative to get a bigger slice of the Indian market.
Having worked in export there, Paul, thank you very much for the call from Sechelt. Yeah, take care. Thanks very much for your call. We have an email here from Rob in West Van who writes, the reason BC has a lot of closures of mills and shortages of logs is because the whole industry has been mismanaged and over-harvested to the point of eco-disaster. Clear-cut logging to the extreme has put our forests in danger. Scientific evidence and the scientific community has warned us of this. That's from Rob in West Van, sending us an email, bctoday@cbc.ca. And Randy writes as well that our Premier seeks another partner in trade is admirable. That he needs to go in person is debatable. Mr. Kahlon could have handled that himself with a Premier here with both hands on the wheel. Furthermore, there would have been less blowback from the Punjabi or from the Sikh community. Good optics? No. Pragmatic politics? Yes, assuredly. Randy, thank you as well for your email. bctoday@cbc.ca is where you can reach us. You can also call us 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. And my guest, Harman Banghu, who is the BC Conservative MLA for Langley Abbotsford, joins me now on the phone. We had some technical issues there. What are your thoughts on that last point, that is it really just about the political optics of this trade mission, but at the underlying this trip is a real attempt at opening up those trade negotiations and actually coming away with something concrete? Is it just politics to be critical of this trip, Harman?
Well, first and foremost, I believe in diversifying trade, just like that caller said, and getting our resources to global markets. But just a few years ago, when there was a potential of our LNG breaking into European markets, I didn't see David Eby advocate for it. I heard him the exact opposite, not wanting to get our LNG to the global market. And now there's a flip. Maybe if he had listened to us on the opposition, it would have worked out a lot better, and there would have already been trade going on. We would have been able to get our LNG to global markets. Now Japan and other regions have beat us, just like your caller said. Russia will send the logs to India, and they have access to LNG. And that's actually a partner of theirs. And that's the issue that's created right now, is the lack of action by the NDP has put us in this mess.
Okay, let me go to a call right now. Tim in Surrey, what are your thoughts?
Well, again, it can depend, but what kind of I find confusing with your conservative guests, as I do with all conservatives, is what do they then suggest? Are they saying that we should not trade with China or India, who have been accused of human rights violations along with other countries, and we still deal with them? Or is Mr. Banghu and the BC Conservatives saying they would then stop all trade with these countries who have been accused of human rights violations? They don't seem to say anything. It's all confusing as usual by our right of center party. Thanks.
Tim, thank you. Your response, Harman.
No, we are not saying that. We need to have a diverse trade platform with all countries. But one thing we have to realize is we need to keep some jobs and dollars circulating in our province. If all we do is say everything can be done cheaper overseas and send dollars out of this country, then there's no dollars circulating here. You will see more youth packing up and hopping on airplanes and leaving this province. We're here to fight for the BC resource sector, all the hard industries that have built this province. That is what we're saying. We're not saying shut down trade, don't go to global markets. Of course we want to work with our global partners. But one thing we need to take seriously is the businesses here. We need to help them thrive. We need to help them achieve a platform to get to global markets. And that would be getting rid of the industrial carbon tax. I've been saying this for a very long time. Businesses here.
That's a federal, that would be a federal policy though, right?
Cap. Well, that is, but why not advocate it here in British Columbia? As the Premier, David Eby could be stepping up for British Columbians and saying, this hurts our business sectors, this hurts our resource sector. We need to get our markets to global market share, and why not take that lead, step up for British Columbians, and have that type of attitude. Because we know by the time that federal election rolls around Alberta, we already know the winner. We need to think about British Columbia here. We're at a crossroads, we're at a crisis, and this is all unfolding under the NDP, unfortunately.
Harman Banghu, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on, and thank you to all listeners.
BC Conservative MLA for Langley Abbotsford, Harman Banghu. An email from Joanne who writes, anything Canada can do to get away from the United States. They're looking for resources in Venezuela and Greenland. People in the U.S. only talk about politics, and so many experts have weighed in and concur. Trump is looking to increase the U.S. land base. There's no doubt Conservatives in Canada will support this colonization of resources if there's financial and political gain. That's an email from Joanne. BC Today at cbc.ca is where you can send us more of your thoughts. I see a lot of emails coming in. BC Today at cbc.ca. We'll put them to you tomorrow as well. An email here from Bill in North Saanich on the state of the forest industry. Bill writes, Crofton Mill is an example of an economic tragedy which can help refocus forest industry and invest in need for a sustainable fiber supply. Compostable packaging is a booming market. BC needs a champion who does not simply focus on managing job loss, but tackles fiber supply, partners to upgrade mills for value-added products, and grow Asian markets. We need a renewed Forest Renewal BC. Bill, thank you. That's an email from Bill in North Saanich. Again, BC Today at cbc.ca is where you can send us more of your thoughts. It is now 12:30. Thanks for joining us here on the show. I'm Michelle Elliott. Very nice to have you on what is a very rainy day here in BC, especially in the South Coast. We'll hear more of that coming up in our news update as well. But in the next half hour, we're going to talk about the housing market and the slowdown in real estate, especially in the Lower Mainland. Is it a problem that needs to be solved? Do we need to spur the real estate industry, spur the market, or is this what's needed for affordability? We'll talk about that coming up and take your calls too. Right now it is time for a CBC News Update. Here's Rob Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. About 10 properties on Vancouver Island have been ordered to evacuate as heavy rain from an atmospheric river continues to fall along BC's south coast. The orders are for properties in the Chemainus Bridge area. Meanwhile, the BC River Forecast Centre says the Englishman River near Parksville has reached or exceeded flood levels. Prime Minister Mark Carney will travel to Prince Rupert later today and will meet with coastal First Nations tomorrow. It's expected they'll discuss a number of subjects, including major projects under consideration, as well as environmental issues. Carney's visit to northwestern BC comes just ahead of his trade mission to China. And the average asking rent for apartments in BC fell 5.4% last month, more than double the rate of decline reported countrywide. The average rent reported across the country is now just over $2,000, the lowest level in 30 months. And now the forecast. Rainfall warnings continue for most of the south coast, including Vancouver Island, Howe Sound, and Metro Vancouver. And there are also rainfall warnings in place for sections of Highway 3, the Sea to Sky, and the Coquihalla. Elsewhere on the north coast, showers this afternoon with a high of 9, highs around 7 with a mix of sun and cloud in the Peace. In the central interior, increasing cloudiness with a high of 8. In the southern interior, highs up to 8 degrees with showers. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, rain this afternoon with highs around 7 degrees. That's your CBC News Update from Vancouver.
Rob, thank you very much. Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. It's 12:33. You're with BC Today, and some entertainment news now. Vancouver-raised actor and producer Seth Rogen, now the proud owner of his own Golden Globe Award. Yes, last night he won for Best Actor in a TV series, a musical, or comedy for his Matt Remick in the studio last night at the award show in Los Angeles.
Golden Globe goes to Seth Rogen.
This is amazing Seth Rogen for the studio, a show that parodies exactly what we're doing right now, a show that featured the Golden Globes.
This is so weird. We just pretended to do this. And now it's happening. Thought the only way I would get to hold one is to create a whole show to give myself a fake one.
Ever the Joker. That's Seth Rogen winning his first Golden Globe last night. But he also won at last September's Emmys, taking home Best Lead Actor there as well. I actually enjoyed the Golden Globes. I did watch them last night. Enjoyed Nikki Glaser. I really liked the music coming in and out of the speakers and presenters. And when Macaulay Culkin came on stage, I think it was first time back in many, many years, they played Return of the Mac, which I just thought was so cute and clever. So good on them for some pretty clever musical choices at the Golden Globes. And congratulations to Vancouver's, we claim him, right? Vancouver's Seth Rogen. .35 now. You're with BC Today. I'm Michelle Elliott. Thanks for being with us. Well, 2025 is set to go down as the slowest year in Lower Mainland real estate in 25 years. Greater Vancouver Realtors said there were 23,800 home sales last year, nearly 25% below the 10-year annual average. In 2026, well, there's mixed expectations. Whether you see all of that as good news or bad news kind of depends on where you're coming from. If you're a first-time buyer, you have more choice. Renters are seeing stabilizing prices. You heard that in our 12:30 news update. But if you're a homeowner, you maybe just received your assessment, seeing it come down. Maybe you've been waiting months to sell your home. It's been sitting on the market. And industry analysts have worried about what it means overall for the economy. We're asking you, is the real estate slowdown a concern for you? Do we need to spur activity, or does it mean greater affordability? You can call us now, 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. Again, 604-669-3733, 1-800-825-5950. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca, or if you're watching us on TikTok, you can leave a comment there. Well, to talk all things housing in BC, I have two guests with me. Michael Geller is a city planner and a retired architect. Peter Waldkirch is director of Abundant Housing Vancouver. Good afternoon to both of you.
Hi there. Thanks for having us on.
Very nice to have you. I heard your interview on with Stephen over the holidays and very much enjoyed it. Who knew, right? Like over the holidays, a housing discussion, housing debate, something that you actually get entertained by. But yes, I was very entertained. So glad to have you both here today. Peter, how do you see that cooling down in the real estate market?
What we have to remember is that, yes, we've seen some prices and some rents coming down, but everything is still higher than it was in 2019. And you know what people were saying about the Vancouver housing system in 2019? That we're in a housing crisis. So we are still dealing with extreme levels of unaffordability, driven in large part by a severe housing shortage, especially in high demand parts like the core of the city of Vancouver and sort of the surrounding areas. And so one of the problems that we're seeing right now with the slowdown in housing activity is that construction is slowing down as well, which is a big problem because we still have a severe housing shortage. You see that prices are still extremely high. You see that in the doubling up rate, the amount of people that are sharing bedrooms or living with roommates who'd rather not. And so we need to really find a way to allow for housing production to continue because we desperately need it. But that also are consistent with prices coming down because, quite frankly, it's a dirty secret of our planning system, our planning department, that it assumes that prices will constantly be going up. Development fees are set so high that as soon as there's any economic uncertainty or any sort of roadblock, the whole sort of edifice crumbles, and we can't allow that to happen.
So the slowdown not slowing down enough for you?
Well, there's different ways of looking at what a slowdown means, right? For me, a functioning housing system has to be one that is affordable, one that provides opportunity for people to start their careers and start their families in the same city they grew up in without having to move hundreds of kilometers away. And we're still in that sort of broken housing system. So key to this is allowing more housing options, especially in the low density areas of the city that have not allowed enough housing options, right? Apartments are banned on about 80% of Vancouver's residential land. So I do believe there is a road forward to create the housing options we need, well, that can be a genuine win-win situation.
Okay, the road forward, but what about where we're at right now, Michael? How do you see the slowdown?
Well, first of all, I have to comment a little bit on what Peter said. I agree with virtually everything he said except for the last bit. Apartments were banned on 80% of those single-family properties throughout Vancouver. But in recent years, both in Vancouver and throughout Metro Vancouver, we're starting to see a much more permissive approach. And many of the people listening and watching us now see these apartments going up on Dunbar and on 41st and throughout Metro. And so there's no doubt that we are starting to change some of our old-fashioned ideas about protecting single-family neighborhoods. But that said, I would also add, I have a book at home called Vancouver Limited. It was written by Donald Gutstein in 1976, and it's all about how do we solve Vancouver's housing crisis. So not to diminish in any way the fact that we have a housing crisis today, and it's more severe than it was in 76. We have always seemed to have had a housing crisis, and we spend a lot of time trying to figure out who to blame.
Okay, but certainly, in 2019, I remember the frenzy, right? People just in bidding wars and the frustration people felt at not being able to get into the housing market. And so the fact that these prices not coming down enough, perhaps, for more buyers to come off of the fence, but how do you see the impact of fewer sales and prices stagnating?
Well, I agree with Peter that we do need supply, but we also need the right kind of supply. Just building market rental apartments along the Broadway corridor and high-rise towers, renting for $2,800 or $3,000 a month for one bedrooms, to my mind, that is not what we need to do. We need the government to be funding much more housing. Many years ago, I was with CMHC looking after the social housing program, the co-ops and nonprofit rental. We need much more of that. It's a tragedy that the government withdrew from doing that in the 90s.
Right, and we're going to see more of that, more of the purpose-built rentals. So is that, I'm going to put out the numbers once again, asking you if the slowdown in real estate in Greater Vancouver especially, if that is a good thing or if it's a problem. Are you seeing better affordability, or is there an issue with regard to the impact on the industry, on the economy? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, 604-669-3733. You can also just hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Our email address is bctoday@cbc.ca. And we are watching your comments on our TikTok Live. We did have a call just now, but it dropped, unfortunately. It sounded like it was someone who was worried about jobs, the impact of the loss of jobs within the construction industry and development. And so I'm sorry that we lost that call. You can call us back, 604-669-3733. My guests are Peter Waldkirch and Michael Geller. Okay, so some sense there of where we stand now and whether it goes far enough to address the housing crisis that's being defined as a housing crisis. But what do you make of that? Peter, you said we need construction, right? We need construction. We need to build supply. Do we not need investment in order to spur that along?
Absolutely. We're looking at a system, our housing system, where it's really fundamentally irrational in a lot of ways. There's huge demand to live in the city of Vancouver because the city of Vancouver is a wonderful place. There's also people that want to build that housing. There's people that want to buy housing. There's people that want to build that housing. And yet the city government sort of says, no, we're not going to allow that. We're going to ban that. We're going to sort of have this planning system that rations out floor space in this drip drop manner that's always at levels far below demand. That is a huge lost opportunity for the construction jobs, which are good jobs, but also all sorts of downstream effects like that. There's entire neighborhoods in the city where cafes, local restaurants, local businesses are struggling to find employees because people need to commute in from the distant suburbs for an hour or more each way just to get to work. We're struggling to attract nurses at VGH and places like that because even good paying jobs like that can't afford to live in the city. So there's a huge economic lost opportunity by not building enough housing in the city of Vancouver.
Michael, do you see that? Do you agree on what's behind the lack of construction?
Not at all.
I didn't think so. Go ahead.
a few years,
Peter's laughing there.
Well, a few years ago, Peter was right. He did his thesis, a master's in law thesis on the whole zoning system and how it often deterred the construction of housing. Today, that's not the problem at all. To my mind, one of the real problems is the cost of creating housing is beyond what people can afford. So even if we do let all of the developers build all the high-rises or six-story apartments they want, oftentimes, even if you exclude the cost of land and exclude any profit, the cost of building is still greater than many of the people who are looking for affordable housing can afford. And that's a real problem.
Okay, so what needs to be done right now then? I mean, we're looking at, hundreds of condos sitting unsold. How do you encourage, keeping in mind what you've just said, but how do you encourage investors and developers to get into the business or to stay in the business?
Well, I suspect Peter and I are about to disagree again, but one of the things that I would suggest is we need to rethink how we finance growth. In other words, if you're a new home buyer, Michelle, and I'm a developer building new condominiums hoping to sell one to you, right now I may have to pay $100,000 in municipal fees for that condominium approval, which will then simply be passed on to you as a buyer. And I think that's a mistake. When I started in this business 55 years ago, we didn't do it that way. The developers didn't pay all these fees. The governments funded some of the infrastructure, and then society as a whole paid for the infrastructure. We didn't burden, people right now think that we're burdening the developers. We're not. We're burdening it's ironic that the people who don't have housing are paying the cost of growth rather than the people who do have housing. And I'm hoping Peter will comment on whether he agrees with that or not.
I think he's itching to.
Well, I definitely agree that a lot of our development fees are too high, and we've relied too much on this idea that newcomers can pay for existing infrastructure even. Okay. But I do have to point out that Michael is wrong about a couple of things. Apartments are banned on most of the city's residential land, on about 80%. He mentioned 41st.
But is a trend, though? Are we moving toward opening that up?
Very, very slowly, not nearly far enough. Most of the city, the zoning, what's allowed to be built hasn't substantially changed since the 1960s. We have entire parts of the city where the housing options are basically been frozen in amber because we sort of privilege this idea of the status quo and of quote unquote neighborhood character for a select few people. And in doing so, deny housing options and housing choice for people who need housing, for young people, for families, for the people who want to start a life and build a life and a career for themselves in this city. And that remains absolutely true. And especially when you're looking at the city government, yes, there's housing economics, there's a lot involved in it. But the core basis, the ground on which it's all built is what are you allowed to build? That's the first question any developer asks themselves. And that can be changed by the city.
That's kind of a fundamental question, isn't it, in this discussion, is what do people want to live in? And that's partly why we're here, is the slowdown in the speculation buying. And so that question of what will people buy in order to actually live in, those who are looking for a home. But let's ask our audience as well, if this slowdown is something that they see as a positive. Is it a problem that needs to be solved? Do we need to spur the real estate market? And what impact is that having on you? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. My guests, very pleased to have Michael Geller, city planner and retired architect, and Peter Waldkirch, director of Abundant Housing Vancouver. Let's take a call from Bill in Delta. Hi, Bill. What are your thoughts on the real estate slowdown?
Hi. Well, you know what? A slowdown might be a drop in the bucket of a start, because I've got to be frank. I'm born and raised here in Metro Vancouver. Let's go back to the 90s when things were only starting to get kind of out of control. Look where we're at now. The infrastructure can no longer sustain the growth. Point blank, pure and simple. The politicians know this, but they're out for votes, bottom line. It's really as basic as that. There's this logic of more people, more housing, more density. That's throwing more fuel onto the fire, cramming more sardines into the tin.
So what's the answer?
The answer is, really, if there is any, it is find ways to move people out of the region, halt development like right now, better late than never. There's no other possible solutions to this.
Okay, spread it around. Okay, Bill, thank you very much. You wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, I just really need to express how fundamentally I disagree with that attitude. Vancouver has given me and my family tremendous opportunity. I feel it is morally wrong to try and shut the door and tell other people, no, you will not have that opportunity that we had. One of the things that made Vancouver great was the fact that we invested in the future, that we took care of the next generation. We thought about the next generation. We cared about the children that were growing up in our neighborhoods and provided them with the same opportunity that we enjoyed. So just to say, no, go someplace else, I like the status quo too much, to me, I just fundamentally disagree with that.
Is it practical, Michael?
It's happening. I mean, one just has to go to Abbotsford, Chilliwack, south of the Fraser, Vancouver Island, to see many people are, in fact, moving away. One of the reasons they're moving away is because Peter won't allow us to build single-family houses in locations where they want to
He's
live.
shaking his head there, okay.
And so if you do want a single-family house or you do want a low-density townhouse, you don't want an apartment, you don't want one of these tiny little two-bedroom apartments that the city has been approving all along the Broadway corridor, you have to move out to the valley.
I have to respond to that. The idea that I'm banning single-family homes is, of course, totally ludicrous. In fact, it's the exact opposite. You can build a single-family home anywhere you want to, virtually. What's banned are the sort of housing that families do want to live in. Low-density, medium-density sort of apartments and townhomes, that's what's banned across the city of Vancouver.
Right. He's not talking about you personally, of course, but just this move towards, multiplex housing on single residential home zoned lots. What do you make of that then?
I mean, when you talk to the young people that I talk to, what they want to live in is on floor space. They want to live in a home. They want to live in larger homes than are often being built today. But that's a reflection of the extremely high demand and the extremely low supply. The people I talk to want to live in a thriving urban neighborhood. They want to live in central neighborhoods, close to their jobs, close to amenities. That's what we need to allow, and that's what we don't allow right now.
And are they willing to live in a smaller space to be closer to those amenities, Michael?
Well, some are, many aren't. But one of the things that many of your listeners and viewers will be commenting on is the number of apartments that have been completed and are now sitting vacant and unsold. And the reason why that has happened, some blame foreigners, some blame investors. The people we should be blaming, and we don't talk a lot about this, are the banks, the lenders. Because the problem we have right now is if I want to build a new apartment building for Peter or for you, I have to pre-sell at least half of those homes before I'm allowed to start construction. And depending on the type of building, it might be 3 years before it's finished. And the reality has been the only people willing to buy 3 or 4 years in advance were investors who, the Bob Rennies of this world, rightly said, I can sell you a studio or a one-bedroom much easier than I can sell you a 2 or larger 3-bedroom. So that, I know, is a bit like inside baseball, but that is a very significant part of the problem we don't talk about.
It's what we've been hearing from realtors as to why we're here now, right? Let's take a call from Erica in South Surrey. Erica, what do you think of the slowdown in the real estate market? Is it something that needs to be addressed or solved?
No, I think it's great. It gives us an opportunity to think rather than make policy based on knee-jerk reactions, so that the politicians and the planners can take a break and a breather. In terms of the development cost charges, if you reduce them or get rid of them, who is going to pay for the increased cost in services that these high-rises are going to demand? That never seems to be brought up by these planners and politicians. In terms of high-rises, another thing that I believe has changed, the reason why they're going up is because we've changed from units per acre to floor area ratio. Units per acre, you understand what the density is there, but floor area ratio has allowed us to build these ridiculously small units. Second thing is, or third thing, I guess, is the idea of super cities. We don't come here anymore, and I think we need to build another super city like Vancouver, like Toronto, Calgary, etc., that can give people the richness that Vancouver has provided many people. But also, families want to live in, as one of the speakers said, you had the opportunity to grow up in Vancouver, probably in a house with a backyard, and that's no longer viable.
Okay, Erica.
More cities. I'm curious to know what your speakers think of super cities.
Okay, I'm gonna make a note of that. I just really want to get to this last call here. Marianne in Vancouver, former mayor of West Vancouver. Hi, Marianne.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I just have a minute or two, but please go ahead.
Sure. Okay, so I know Michael Geller, and I have a lot of respect for him, but there is one point I do disagree with strongly. First of all, I think the slowdown is excellent. It was to be expected. Everybody can't have everything we want, high house values and then lack of affordability. We all have to give. But the one thing that I've always heard these shows and disagreed with, if you lower DCCs, who is going to benefit? And I can tell you from my 17 years in office, 4 years as mayor of West Vancouver, ground zero for unaffordability, the developers are going to charge, and the realtors or developers are going to charge what the market will bear. That's their guiding light. They're not going to turn around with reduced DCCs and say, oh, we're going to give this $100,000 saving to the buyers. They're just not going to do it. So it is a supply and demand issue. Unfortunately, we do need the full spectrum of housing. And I'll just finish with West Vancouver did a model that I'm very proud of. We took municipal land, partnered with a nonprofit for $1. They built it, Kiwanis. It is open, it is full, and it wasn't social housing. Okay. It was workforce housing for fire, police, and teachers.
Okay. Marianne, I'll have to jump in there. Thank you very much. I just really want to take that development cost charge point that you made and our previous caller made as well. What would be the impact of that? And that's going to go to you, Michael.
My point is it should be shared. Right now, we're placing too much of a burden on that first-time buyer. And, Marianne, I compliment you on the initiative which resulted in that affordable housing. However, there was a condo development that you encouraged to be built on the adjacent site, and that developer was not able to proceed with the project because, unfortunately, as I suggested before, the cost of building that housing was greater than what even the residents of West Vancouver could afford. And so that Darwin development has been converted to rental. Some may say that's a good thing, but I think there's a lot of people out there who would much rather buy a home than be paying $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month to rent a home.
I have 1 minute left. So, Peter, how do you address the infrastructure then without those fees?
Yeah, well, there's a few things. First of all, I just have to point out that West Vancouver is one of the most unaffordable places on the planet. So I think we should be very thoughtful about who we take advice from when it comes to affordable housing.
Hey, fair comment is fair comment.
And when it comes to the infrastructure, I think the other side of that coin is then we should look at the places that have an overcapacity of infrastructure right now. For example, much of the west side of Vancouver has schools that are under capacity. It is transit that is under capacity, has an abundance of parks, and yet those are the areas where we allow the least new housing options. So if we are serious about the infrastructure sort of discussion, that needs to be part of the conversation as well.
What a conversation we've had just now. Thank you so much to both of you.
Thanks for inviting us.
Michael Geller, Peter Waldkirch.